So here's the new stuff. Quadratic formula, rational solutions. Going to that one. And so we're going to solve the equation for all real solutions. There is a formula that I need to write. It's called the quadratic formula. I'm going to write it over here. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now, I had to memorize this when I was in 6th grade, but luckily for you guys, you don't have to memorize it. You just have to write it down and use your notes on your test. So this is the quadratic formula. And also, I believe it is on the note sheet that's uploaded to the Google Classroom. So if you write it down wrong, you can always take a look over there, or you can watch this recording. But this is your formula. So what is the A, B, and C that we are talking about? Well, let's take a look at this equation. First step is you have to make sure it's set equal to 0. So we have it equal to 0, which is good. Then the number that is your coefficient of the variable squared, so in this case p squared, this is your a value. So a is equal to 16. The b is a number that's next to the variable, so it's the negative 8. And then the c value is just a constant, so positive 1. So here's your a, b, and c. Are there any questions? So then we just plug it in. So I guess in this case, it's not going to be x equals, but it's going to be p equals just because that's the letter we're using. So I'm going to write p equals. Okay, so negative b, negative, and our b is negative 8, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so negative 8 squared, minus 4ac, so a is 16, c is 1. All over 2 times a. So all I did was I just plugged everything in. Are there any questions up till here? Okay, so let's keep going. P is equal to negative of negative 8 is just going to be positive 8, plus or minus the square root of, use your calculator. What is negative 8 squared? That's going to be 64 minus 4 times 16 times 1. That's going to be 64. I didn't need to draw it that long. There we go. All over 2 times 16 is 32. Simplify again. 8 plus or minus 64 minus 64 is just 0. So square root of 0 over 32. This is just going to be 8 plus or minus, what is the square root of 0? Just 0. So we have 2 answers. Let me scoot out so I can zoom or give myself more space. We're going to have 2 answers. We're going to have 8 plus 0 over 32, and we're going to have 8 minus 0 over 32. I should have given myself more space, but that's okay. So 8 plus 0 over 32 is just going to be 8 over 32, and then 8 minus 0 over 32 is also going to be 8 over 32. So it turns out our 2 answers is actually just the same old answer. So I'm going to just simplify 8 over 32. Both of these are divisible by, wait, is 32 divisible by 8? Yes, both of these are divisible by 8. So I'm going to simplify our fraction by dividing both top and bottom by 8. So 8 divided by 8 is 1, and 32 divided by 8 is 4. So our simplified final answer is just 1/4. So this is your final answer. Are there any questions? 1/4. Let's do another one. So here's our equation. Remember, the first thing we want to do is set it equal to 0. So I'm going to minus 6w minus 6w. And then this gives me 6w squared minus 17w plus 12 equals 0. So now it's equal to 0. we can now plug it into our formula. Let me write in our formula. So w will be equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so what is our a, b, and c? Remember that a is the number here, so a is 6, positive 6. B is the number over here, so that's b is equal to negative 17. And c, oh my gosh, how did that happen? And c is that number, so c is equal to positive 12. So plugging it in, we have negative b, so negative 17, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so negative 17 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 6, times c, which is 12, all over 2 times a, which is 6. So just plugging it in. Let's simplify. Negative 17 is just 17, plus or minus the square root of, and then on our calculator, because I don't expect you to know what 17 squared is, 17 times 17 is 289. Positive, because a negative square is going to give you a positive number. And then 4 times 6 times 12 will be 288. 2 times 6 is 12. Okay, so now we have 17 plus or minus the square root of that. So let's simplify. 289 minus 288 is just 1. So 17 plus or minus square root of 1 over 12. What is the square root of 1? 1. Because 1 squared is 1. So 17 plus or minus 1 over 12. Now we can figure out what our two solutions are. So there's two spots. I gave myself more space this time. Your first answer will be 17 plus 1 over 12. Your second answer will be 17 minus 1 over 12. Okay, so what is 17 plus 1? That's 18. What is 17 minus 1? That is 16. And so all we gotta do is simplify these. But before I go on, are there any questions? Let's simplify the 18 over 12 first. So 18 and 12 are both divisible by 3. So if I divide by 3 on the top and divide by 3 on the bottom, 18 divided by 3 gives me, oh wait, they're both divisible by not just 3. They're both divisible by 6. So let's divide them by 6 instead. So 18 divided by 6 gives me 3, and 12 divided by 6 gives me 2. So one of my answers will be 3/2. Now let's take a look at the bottom one, 16 over 2. Oh my gosh, I can't read. 16 over 12, and both of these numbers are divisible by 4. So I'm going to divide top and bottom by 4. 16 divided by 4 gives me 4. 12 divided by 4 gives me 3. So here are my two answers, 3/2 and 4/3. Are there any questions? So 3/2 and 4/3. Cool. Okay, let's do the next category, but I'm going to record it in the same video just because it's still the quadratic formula. So irrational level 1. Solve the equation for all real solutions in simplest form. So since it's still the quadratic formula, remember you want it to equal 0. So right now it's equal to 2k. Let's move that 2k. You get 5k squared plus 17k plus 11 equals 0. Now we have it equal to 0. We can start plugging it in to our quadratic formula. So let me write it out. K is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So before we plug it in, we must figure out what are our a, b, and c values. A is the number in front of the squared variable. So a is 5, positive. B is the number in front of just the regular old variable, not squared. So B is positive 17. And C is the constant term, so C is positive 11. Now we can plug it in. So we have negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4A, which is 5, times C, which is 11, all over 2A, which is 5. Let's simplify. Negative of 17 is just negative 17, plus or minus 17 squared was that 289, minus 4 times 5 times 11. Let's do that. 4 times 5 times 11 gives me 220. All over 2 times 5 gives me 10. Okay, and then let's continue simplifying. Okay, so what is 289 minus 220? That gives me 69. Okay, and then this, I believe, is just your final answer. So we can type it in like this. I could have you write out the two separate answers, so negative 17 plus square root of 69 over 10, and also negative 17 plus, or sorry, not plus, negative 17 minus the square root of 69 over 10. There are two answers in here. However, if you can see, they gave us this plus or minus button, so we don't have to type it out twice. You can just type exactly this. So that is what I'm going to do. Are there any questions? Let's go ahead and enter this in then. So negative 17 plus or minus the square root of 69 over, oh man, okay. I'm going to put parentheses around everything so that it will know it's a giant fraction. Now over 10. There you go. So I guess when you type it in, make sure you type parentheses around the entire top part so it lets you type it like a fraction like this. Let's do another one. So remember, first step, set it equal to 0. So move the 5d squared, 5d squared, move it over to the other side. You will get 2d squared minus 9d plus 3 equals 0. So now that it is set to 0, we can start plugging it into the quadratic formula. So d is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Sorry, there we go. So here's our formula. I just keep writing it out every single time, but you don't have to because it's written in your notes. Okay, so what is your a, b, and c? Remember, a is the number over here. So a is positive 2. B is the number over here, so B is negative 9, and C is the number over here, so C is positive 3. So let's plug it in. Negative of negative 9 plus or minus the square root of negative 9 squared minus 4 times A, which is 2, times C, which is 3. All over 2 times A, which is 2. Okay. So we'll have negative of negative 9, which is positive 9, plus or minus the square root of negative 9 squared is positive 81, because remember, a negative times a negative is a positive, so it's positive 81 minus 4 times 2 times 3, which is 24. All over 2 times 2 is 4. So simplify again, 9 plus or minus the square root of 81 minus 24 is 57. And so this is the answer we can type. Are there any questions? All right, so 9 plus or minus square root 57 over 4. 9 plus or minus square root 57 over 4. All right, that's it for this category. And those were the two quadratic formula ones. So let's talk about the discriminant now in the next video.